Hey, my name is James, and this summer my colleagues and I at Crowning Games are going to make a 2D platformer game inspired by retro Kirby games. Before I get started, a little background on us. We're college students who met through our school's game development club and started making games together. We participated in a couple of game jams, namely Mini Jam and Ludum Dare, and even placed 6 out of 300 games on one of them. Recently, with school being out, we decided to take on the monumentous task of creating a full-on game in 2 months. We've all been there as game devs. We work on projects for 2 weeks only to forget about them, leaving them unfinished and withering away on our hard drives. So that's why we want to experience the entire game development pipeline, from ideation to development and all the way to the very end of launching and releasing it on Steam and other platforms. So as I said before, we chose to make a 2D platformer game. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, platformers are relatively simple to make and we believe would be an excellent choice for our first game. Two, although platformers aren't particularly popular in Steam, we just love the genre. A lot of us grew up playing platformer games like Mario and Kirby when we always wanted to recreate a similar experience. There's just this great feeling when exploring linear worlds, jumping from platform to platform, discovering different abilities, and unraveling the story of the game level by level. So now that we had established what type of game we wanted to make, the next thing we had to do was figure out our main mechanic. We wanted our game to stick out from the oversaturated platformer market, so we had to think of an idea that hasn't been done before. So we spent at least a week thinking about what the main mechanic for the game should be, listing all our ideas on a Google Doc, and eventually we came up with a pretty interesting idea. What if the player could absorb anything in the game that was colored black? Now initially I was skeptical, thinking it might not be compelling enough as a main mechanic. However, the idea was inspired by the manga Kuro, which tells the story of a girl and her rather strange looking black cat. In one of the extras, the cat suddenly gains the ability to absorb things in the world that are black in color. And in one of the panels, the cat absorbs an ant nest and grows gigantic in size. Kuro is also able to shapeshift into things like ladders, wings, and even split into thousands of different clones like Naruto's Shadow Clone Jutsu. The concept just seemed like it would fit perfectly in a video game. With a rough idea of the main mechanic, we started crafting the narrative behind the game. Similar to the manga Kuro mentioned before, we decided on a female protagonist named Kina, a girl with bunny-shaped hair, and a sidekick named Moku, who was a shape-shifting alien being able to absorb black things in the environment. After a couple days of storyboarding, we settled on an alien invasion trope for our story. The game begins in the dead of night as a meteor, harboring an extraterrestrial species, crashes onto Earth. When our protagonist wakes up the next morning, they notice that their field of flowers have been destroyed. While investigating, she notices a mysterious black creature. She gives it some black flowers and it takes a liking to her by shape-shifting bunny ears. I'm not going to spoil the rest of the story, but from there, they go on a quest to save the Earth from this invasion of shape-shifting creatures. Once the overall story was outlined, next we began to lay out the overall game loop. Similar to a lot of platformer games, we're envisioning a game where the player progresses through 5 worlds, with each world presenting a collection of levels with a particular theme. In addition to that, we're thinking of the player destroying some type of object in each level. These objects, which we're calling altars for now, will be optional for each level, but for 100% completion of the game, you will have to destroy them all. We feel that this will greatly improve the player's interest in the game, as well as improve replayability. Now I know what you're probably thinking. A 5-world game with collectibles to be done in 2 months? There's no possible way you could get that done. Yes, I agree with you. If you expect a game to be done in a month, multiply that by 3, and that's how long it'll actually take. And for the most part, this often ends up being true. I've worked on many projects even outside of game dev where this has actually happened to me, so I understand. The idea is, we wanted to make a quick summer game. So we're going to make sure the complexity of the game is simple enough that it can be done theoretically in 2 months. The number is just a guide, just to make sure we don't get too ambitious. Will it take longer than 2 months? Yeah, probably. But by constantly keeping in mind the goal of creating a game in 2 months, we'll learn to manage our project scope effectively, preventing scope creep and ensuring that we complete our summer project in a reasonable amount of time without it turning into a multi-year endeavor. Alright, so after defining our scope and game loop, we decided to flesh out our main mechanic a bit more. So we had a general idea of Moku being able to absorb black things in the environment, but we thought that this wouldn't be much interesting on its own. So we came up with an idea of some sort of progress bar which fills as more black things are absorbed. In addition to absorbing these things, Moku would grow larger and larger and would be able to perform different mechanic enhancements. So for example, what if Moku could transform into a spring at the cost of a certain amount of darkness? Or perhaps holding down a certain button while falling could transform Moku into an umbrella, letting the player glide across obstacles. We love this idea because it echoes the copyability in the Kirby franchise, which is exactly the vibe we're aiming for with our game. A week had passed since we started pre-production, and it was time to start developing our prototype. We wanted to get our prototype done as quickly as possible and into the hands of beta testers so we can know immediately if our idea was interesting enough. The game engine we were going to use for developing our game was Godot. Most of us had experience with Unity, but we decided to give Godot a chance. Although Godot has fewer resources and tutorials compared to Unity, its popularity is rapidly growing. Godot just seems like the perfect choice for a straightforward 2D platformer, and quite frankly, waiting for 30 seconds after making a one-line change to my code just isn't appealing to me. Before we started working on the prototype, we first set up project management tools like a mood board, design document, and a basic Kanban board. These tools are essential when working with large teams and just make sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to the vision of the game. We divided the game development tasks among our team. Our promotional artist V created fantastic concept art for Kina's various actions in the game, such as walking, running, jumping, and performing abilities with Moku. I then transformed the concept art into pixel art and began working on other graphics like the GUI elements, game tiles, and background. Next, we tackled the implementation of the game mechanics. We started with the basic player movement and had Moku follow the player's direction. We made it possible for Moku to interact with and absorb black balls in the environment, showing the player's progress bar increasing as a result. After that, we introduced mechanic enhancements like dashing, double jumps, and gliding. We didn't like the idea of the player having to move to where the black things were in order to absorb them, so we implemented a basic lunge attack, where Moku would charge forward and attempt to absorb anything in its path. The motion was kinda awkward, but it was good enough. Next, we started working on melee attacks for Kina. Keeping with the idea of shapeshifting, we wanted Moku to be able to turn into a club as sort of a signature weapon for Kina. Inspired from Kirby's sword ability, we implemented a 3-hit combo system, where the more times the player taps the attack button in succession, the more parts of the combo are revealed. After implementing all these mechanics on a basic level, it was now time to get feedback from beta testers. We got a couple of beta testers from our Discord and set up a couple quick Q&A sessions. We wrote out a guide for a couple questions to ask them, and over the span of a couple days, we got very helpful feedback. The feedback was mostly positive, and our beta testers loved the overall aesthetics of the game. And although we had a lot of kind words, we also had a lot of constructive criticism. And based on the criticism, we decided to scrap the progress bar mechanic. Beta testers really just didn't understand it that well, and we felt that it just wasn't the direction we were looking for in the game. We then took a little break to reevaluate our main mechanic, and finally, after a couple days of brainstorming, we settled on a final idea. The player is still able to absorb anything black, however, instead of a progress bar, Moku will be able to shapeshift into whatever they just absorbed. In addition to that, once you absorb something, Moku gets fat and is unable to fly. This of course means that Kina will have to carry Moku around in order to perform the ability. If Kina gets hit while carrying Moku, she will drop her. This will leave Moku in a vulnerable state, and if enemies attack her while she's on the ground, then Kina automatically loses a life. This aligns perfectly with our vision for the game, which centers on a symbiotic relationship between Kina and Moku, both characters depending on each other to progress, adding a compelling dynamic to the gameplay. We feel that this mechanic will be more engaging and unique for the players. Fast forward to the present, we have completely redone the sprites for Kina and Moku, and we fully implemented the mechanics for absorbing things and performing abilities. Now we're currently in the progress of creating a demo. The demo will include Worlds 1, 2, 3, and we're looking for beta testers who are interested in giving us much needed feedback. If you're interested in our game and would like to join our community, the link to our Discord server is in the description. We're also planning on launching a Kickstarter next month, so if you'd like to help us reach our crowdfunding goals, keep an eye out for future updates. Additionally, we've just set up our Steam page, where you can sign up to try our demo in the future and wishlist the game. So as we continue development, we'll be creating devlogs to share our progress, so stay tuned on those updates. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support really makes a difference. We hope you'll stick with us as we work to turn our dreams into a reality. Thanks for watching.